Over the last few days, a lot of previews have come out for Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and it's been interesting to see because I was quite curious who was actually going to get access. Was it only going to be the BioWare shills, like the people who, even in the dark days of Anthem, Andromeda, people who were still quite generous towards BioWare, quite pleasant towards them, sucking up and so on? Was it just going to be those people, or would they also open it up to a lot more mainstream YouTubers who maybe haven't always been nice? They did call BioWare out for, say, Andromeda facial animations, made fun of them, clowned on Anthem when it was deserved, and so on. So I was curious to see if BioWare would sort of lock it all down. It was just going to be the shills, or if they were going to pull back that curtain and allow a large variety of people to play the game, to speak their mind and voice their opinion. Now, to be fair, BioWare did choose the latter option. They did open the game up to a lot of people. I was kind of surprised by that. Given they kept it hidden and under wraps for so long, I kind of figured that they would hide it from anyone who might even be slightly critical, but they didn't do that. They did open it up. And when it comes to assessing the previews themselves and how people are reacting, are they positive, are they negative, I'm going to be as real as possible because I've obviously sat here criticizing the game. I've been pretty harsh on it. I've talked about the character models being utterly pathetic. I've talked about the BioWare team feeling a bit talentless, past their prime. It was all looking like a bit of a joke. When it comes to the previews themselves, being totally honest and not twisting the narrative to suit my agenda or something, the previews, I'd say, most of them have been positive. There have definitely been some mixed ones, but a lot of them have been positive. Despite reading them, though, and despite watching them, my opinion on the game has not really changed at all. And there's a few reasons for that. Starting off, you've got to think about why a lot of people have been very, very critical of the Veilguard so far. I'd say there's been sort of two sides to the criticism. The first is there's a lot of fans of Dragon Age as a series who've liked mostly Dragon Age Origins, maybe some of the games after that, but they've liked them for being RPGs. They've loved the role-playing elements of them, and they felt that the Veilguard is just letting them down there. It's obviously got the God of War kind of inspired combat that many of the previews have talked about, going all in on that action direction. And a lot of the grittiness that was there in Dragon Age in the past, it feels like it's gone. It feels almost like a different series in some way, even if some of those characters are still there. That's just turned a lot of people off, and some of the previews do address that. But the second part of the criticism, and I think it is the most important, the previews don't really talk about it, and I'll come to that. But I think the vibe of the game, the unappealing companions, just the entire atmosphere of the Veilguard and how it just feels like an agenda is being shoved down people's throats. Like, attractive people aren't allowed because that might be appealing to gamers, traditional gamers. Men, for instance. That's really bad. Like, we've all kind of felt that, and what that all really means is the game just doesn't feel cool. It fails the vibe check. No one sees it and thinks, gee, I want to part with my $60. This looks genuinely awesome. I've got to play this. This is going to be the next big thing. Everyone just sees it and thinks this looks lame. Everything about the game that you actually see with your eyes just feels like it was built from the ground up with ideology in mind. That the devs, their focus from the start was not about making a great Dragon Age, a great RPG. It was about pushing messages onto people, and you can simply see that, as we have with many other games. Now, when we talk about the previews, the positive previews, again, some of them being mixed, there's certainly a lot of people puzzled by those previews, and they'll say things like, oh, EA obviously paid these YouTubers or these game journalists to say positive things, or they're all shills for BioWare, whatever it might be. I don't really think that's what's going on. I don't think that gets to the root of it, and sure, there's definitely gaming journalists that are compromised by BioWare EA, and it doesn't matter how bad this game was, they were going to shill for it. That definitely happens, but I certainly don't think it is all of them, probably not the mainstream YouTubers, for instance. The first thing to keep in mind is that most of the people who walked away with a positive impression, these are people who were already positive about the game before they ever went to BioWare and played it. They were making positive videos about it, optimistic ones, they wanted to love the game, and then they went there and they were content. They didn't seem to mind the shift to action combat, they said the story was okay, play, maybe because a lot of their favorite characters were back that they haven't seen for a decade, all those sorts of things. So there's people who basically never changed their opinion. They were positive before and after. Now, I did see some people who were positive before, but then changed their opinion to mixed after playing it. I didn't see a whole lot of people who were super negative towards it, and then after playing it, BioWare have convinced them and that they've changed their mind. Maybe there was a couple, maybe I've missed some, but I didn't see so much of that. I don't think a lot of people have actually changed their opinions before and after playing, and if they did, it was more negative after playing it. So I wanted to mention that first, but I do think that there is something else at play here, a genuine elephant in the room. And that is that all of these mainstream creators, most of who gave the Veilguard a pretty positive impression, just think about this. If you ask them, why did Concord fail? What do you think most of these people would say? What would their answer be? Well, we've seen the answer from most people out there. And what most people will say if you ask them that question is they'll give a lot of excuses about, oh, it failed because of the price, oh, the market was saturated, hero shooters, they're just not as popular right now. They'll give you all these reasons, but they'll never give you the common sense answer that we all know is true, but a lot of people just won't say it. And that is when you've got a game that just fails that vibe check. It looks awful, nothing about it is cool at all, it's simply not appealing, and it's not that way just because of incompetence, that might be part of it. But it really is that way for ideological reasons, that the people who are making a lot of these games that look like the Veilguard, that look like Concord and so on, they're extreme on one end of the political spectrum, and they lather their game in all of that, and it gets to a point where just an everyday member of the public looks at it, and they're just not interested. It looks like crap. I can throw out a million buzzwords like DEI, woke, or whatever, but you don't really need to do that. Just common sense, you look at it, it's just not appealing. People, Concord for instance, they see overweight characters for the most part. That's not cool. No one wants that. No one wants to spend their money and have that be their entertainment. You see men who look like women, vice versa. It's just not going to be appealing to an average member of the public, and that is a big reason why the Veilguard had such a negative reception from its unveiling, its outset. That's why most people have been very negative, contrary to the previews. Now, the reason I say that and I make that comparison with Concord is most of the people who are previewing the game, they simply can't raise the fact that this game fails the vibe check and simply looks bad, ignoring the particulars about the story and maybe the quest, the combat, all these RPG particulars. Just looking at it overall, it looks bad. They can't say that because they know to say that would be going against the ideology of lots and lots of people in the industry who are pushing what is a very obvious agenda. And the people who are previewing it and having to deal with this, they may agree with some of those politics, they may not even care, they might be pretty apolitical, they're sick of hearing about this stuff, but what they do know is if they speak out against that and even just raise that as an issue and try and be common sense about it. Like, well, we don't want to play as overweight, weird characters who look like this, who are unattractive. Like, most people want attractive characters. They want to bring along companions, for instance, interesting characters who intrigue them and look decent. They can't really say that because they know as soon as they do that, they're going to be on the outskirts. I mean, when you think about it, a lot of those mainstream content creators, they need access to those previews because YouTube, for instance, it's a competitive space, and if you've got one creator who's getting access to the previews and can talk about the Veilguard, how it plays, give those opinions before it comes out, they're going to be in a much better position to generate views, generate income, versus someone who does not have access to those previews. And it's not even purely previews like this. You're talking about early access for reviewing these games, maybe getting access to interviews, going to some of these events and then covering those and everything. That's a big part of a lot of these people's income. So I can kind of understand why they wouldn't want to bring up, for instance, the real reason Concord failed or go into the genuine problems of the Veilguard and why a lot of people are not liking it right now. they're not going to do that and sort of wreck their whole careers over it. It's not going to be the hill that they're going to die on. It's annoying, but I understand it. And I really think it's a problem of the wider industry, not just individual content creators. Like, it's the industry, the developers, these game companies, they are the ones that really need to be cleared out, because this shouldn't be happening. We should be getting across the board games that look appealing, not this crap. And sure, the individual parts of the Veilguard, again, the story, the combat by itself, if we ignore the fact that it's not really RPG combat anymore, they've gone in a completely other direction, it's an ARPG now. All these individual aspects, maybe they're okay. I mean, the game has a big budget, it's EA backed. I was never expecting for this to be like a Golem or something, even though it'd be funny to clown on, to laugh at. It was never going to be that level of a disaster. It's probably serviceable, it's probably okay, it's going to be like a 7, an 8 out of 10, that's probably what it is. But just the fact that the game across the board looks totally unappealing, and knowing that was an ideological choice from the developers who were more focused on their politics than making something that the average person might be interested and might be excited about, that really dooms it. It doesn't really matter what these previews say. The first impression was rubbish. I don't think that under the surface, the strengths of the game that are supposedly there are going to overcome that. I've always said it's going to have to be an incredible game to overcome that first impression, and the previews don't suggest that. It's mostly people saying, BioWare are back, because it's better than Anthem, and it's better than Andromeda. Like, that's the lowest bar you can basically get. Okay, it's a little better than them. I think most people expected that, but it's still going to be just pretty average in the grand scheme. It's not going to be like those huge games everyone talked about when they came out, the Baldur's Gates, the Elden Rings. It's not going to reach that, and because it had that bad first impression, I do simply think it's going to fail. Maybe it'll be okay for people on a discount, but again, I feel the devs just ruined it for themselves by focusing on the wrong things. And you got to remember with Concord as well, a lot of objective people, I guess, have said that the game itself doesn't actually play that badly for its genre and what it's trying to do. That's not why it failed. It plays okay. It's not a disaster. It's, again, the vibe check. You fail that, normies are not going to be interested. It has to look appealing. It's marketing 101, and these companies, they try and like bypass that for ideological reasons. It doesn't work, and that's why these companies are failing, and they're failing to learn. Unless they accept that and leave their extreme politics out of it, they're going to continue to fail. And I'll just mention a couple of things. So obviously previews like this, BioWare is back. Early Dragon Age, the Veilguard, it's a comeback for BioWare. It's a definite Game of the Year contender. The Veilguard, again, definite Game of the Year contender, and this is a different author as well. If you look at these people, a lot of the article writers are genuine BioWare shills, so I don't want you to think that all of the previews are honest. Some of them certainly are not, but again, the mainstream content creators, a big reason they're not saying a lot of negative things is because they have to skip over the fact that the game looks unappealing. Because again, you go against the game companies, the devs, politics, and it'll wreck things for them. They know it, it's just simply how it works, sadly. To just give some of my thoughts about what I've actually seen, so the character creator's a big one that people are touting as, oh my goodness, this is a new standard, incredible, BioWare, they're setting trends. I don't believe that. Again, the hair works, the hair tech that people are saying the greatest thing ever. BioWare didn't come up with this. It was the FIFA team at EA, and they lent their tools to BioWare. They share their learnings, essentially. And BioWare might have done some of it, but the credit has to go to the FIFA team. Most gamers, I think, don't know that because the, I guess, online sort of watching videos about RPGs, probably not the audience for FIFA, so you probably didn't notice. But that's what that is. BioWare didn't create the hair tech, they're just using it. Then you've got the other stuff like body types, body proportions, and there was the whole thing about them including the option to cut off your tits. They put that in there, and I won't go too far into that because a lot of people have already made videos about it, but obviously it's done for political reasons. How is that improving the game whatsoever? It's not, and the proof that it is political is they've gone out of their way. Again, I obviously haven't played this, but from what people have said, the options they've shown, they've gone out of their way to ensure that people simply can't really make conventionally attractive characters because, again, that's bad. That goes against the BioWare devs' ideology, a lot of the games industry's ideology, and their message is basically, if you like appealing, attractive characters, whether they're women or whether they're men, you might want to play as a guy. I think most guys do. They want to play as a muscular guy who is like the best version of them, like who you might look up to. They want to ban that as well, because that's apparently toxic masculinity, it's sexist, it's racist, or whatever. So that's not allowed in the character creator. And yet they tout it as like being the best thing ever. Even if I ignore all of that, and we pretend that you can customize visually any character you want, this still isn't the best character creator for me, because this might just be me, maybe I'm just getting too old, but when it comes to RPGs, the aesthetics are not the most interesting part for me. When I play most RPGs, I'm thinking about actual choice to make that's meaningful. Like, we look at Fallout New Vegas character creator, I'm excited when it comes to picking skills, perks, or what I might excel in, for instance. And BioWare have had that in some of their past games. It seems to be lacking here. Maybe I missed it, or I'll find out more when I play the game. That's what I like. I like making choices that are meaningful to the gameplay, not purely aesthetic choices. No character creator that's almost purely aesthetic can be the best RPG character creator for me. That's a joke. I'll just end on this, because obviously with the previews, there's been a lot of people now saying, we were right, we knew this game would be incredible. All you haters online who are obsessed with culture war, you've all been proven wrong, you're a minority. This person's trying to make that argument, and they're saying, isn't made for gamers, Veilguard, yet it is in the number 5 top-selling pre-orders on Steam. Look at this. EA Sports, Dragon Ball's ahead, Veilguard's there at number 4. It's clearly doing incredibly well. Anyone who thinks otherwise is coping. They say this, but their argument doesn't actually hold up to any scrutiny whatsoever, and they show themselves to be kinda dumb, which you might have expected. If we go to the Steam Global Sellers list, we can see that the Veilguard's up to 108. That's ahead of where it was a week ago. It was in like 210 was where it was, doing a little bit better, but still not very well for a game of this budget with this reputation, the IP. What they're not understanding is, even if that's true, I can't be bothered checking if any other unreleased games are in the global sellers, because they're ignoring every game that's released, even games that have been released for like 10 years that are selling better than the Veilguard. They're simply saying it's number 4 most pre-ordered if you ignore every other game on the list, given it's at 108. But the thing they don't get is, if you look at Stalker 2, which is at 112, it's number 4 most wishlisted compared to the Veilguard's 37. It's got 220,000 followers on Steam compared to the Veilguard's pretty pathetic 60,000. It's obviously selling much better. The difference is, Steam Global Sellers is for right now, maybe this week or something. How are these games selling? It's not all time. So Stalker 2's been up for pre-order for yonks, and has clearly sold way more copies, given all the metrics, wishlist, followers, compared to the Veilguard. The Veilguard is at its absolute peak for pre-orders right now. It's not going to get any better than this, and it will just come down to when it comes out, does it sell well at release. But pre-order numbers, it's not doing well by any metric. Anyone like this clown who's telling you that is coping, doesn't understand the numbers. I don't think these previews really change anything. I don't think they move the needle on the game's success very much. I think when it comes out, people who are on the fence, they're probably going to be disappointed, given that vibe check that most people really aren't allowed to speak about. At the end of the day, don't trust anyone. Don't trust people trying to sell you on it or not sell you on the game. Wait for it to come out. Make the best decision for yourself. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.